welcome to today's Explainer. Look, back in 2022 and 2023, Meta absolutely shocked the tech world by letting tens of thousands of employees go. But today, we're going to look right past those dramatic headlines to unpack the real underlying mechanics of this massive workforce reduction. I mean, was it just a panic move? Or was it a deeply complex, highly calculated strategic pivot? Let's dive in. So let's start with our central mystery here. What actually happens when one of the world's most powerful, resource-rich tech giants suddenly realizes, uh-oh, we hired way too fast? We really need to explore whether this drastic reduction was a fundamental failure of executive leadership and foresight, or if it was actually a painful, surgical move totally required for the company's ultimate survival. To understand the crash, we first have to look back at the catalyst. Part 1, the pandemic hiring boom. Surfing the digital surge. Tens of thousands. That is the sheer, mind-boggling volume of employees Meta rapidly added to its payroll in a remarkably short window. You know the story. As the whole world suddenly moved indoors, Meta experienced this colossal surge in digital activity. And to capture that unprecedented demand and scale up their massive infrastructure, they basically went on an aggressive, no-holds-barred hiring spree. The mandate from the top was clear: grow as fast as humanly possible to meet the moment. Now, this immense influx of talent wasn't just padding out existing teams. It was a massive, calculated expansion across multiple fronts. Think of it like a strategic military offensive. Engineering departments skilled up heavily just to handle the sheer server load of a world living entirely online. Product teams absolutely ballooned to rapidly push out new features. And crucially, and we'll come back to this, enormous swaths of top-tier talent were funneled directly into Meta's highly ambitious metaverse initiatives. At the time, honestly, the growth curve felt infinite. But the infinite curve flattened. Which brings us to part 2. Reality hits hard. The post-pandemic shift. The world opened back up and the math just completely stopped working. That explosive pandemic engagement stabilized the second people returned to their physical lives. And those record-breaking ad revenues suddenly hit a wall. Plus, at the exact same time, competition intensified dramatically. Platforms like TikTok practically surged into the mainstream overnight, fiercely battling Meta for user attention and, more importantly, ad dollars. The entire environment abruptly shifted from a rising tide lifting all boats to a brutal cage match for finite engagement. And making matters exponentially more complicated? Billions. Literally billions of dollars. While their core revenue was slowing and user engagement was plateauing, Meta was simultaneously pouring astronomical sums of cash into the metaverse. I mean, just imagine the sheer executive anxiety in that boardroom. Your primary revenue engine is stalling out, your competition is heating up faster than ever, and your costs are absolutely skyrocketing to finance this massively expensive, highly uncertain vision of the future. This created a highly dangerous imbalance. Let's move to part 3. The strategic corporate dilemma, and diagnose what happens when the scales tip. Leadership suddenly found themselves having to untangle 3 suffocating pressures. First up, severe overcapacity. They quite simply had more employees than their day-to-day operations actually required, and that fed directly into number 2, immense cost pressure. Look, employee compensation is a massive anchor on a tech balance sheet, and when revenue slows down, that anchor threatens to drag the whole ship under. Finally, strategic misalignment. Vast resources and highly paid talent were tied up in the distant, uncertain metaverse rather than fortifying the core business. The choice was brutal: maintain the workforce and risk a severe financial tailspin, or cut deep to protect the company's future. Meta, as we all know, chose the incredibly difficult path. They initiated large-scale layoffs to fundamentally reset their cost structure. Internally, Mark Zuckerberg framed these painful cuts using a very specific mantra: the year of efficiency. This wasn't just pitched as letting people go. It was communicated as a necessary systemic shift toward much leaner operations and a deliberate refocusing of the company's energy right back onto its core revenue-generating products. They basically had to get back to what actually paid the bills. But you really can't just trim numbers on a spreadsheet without consequence. Let's look at part 4, cost of the cut, the deep organizational consequences. Treating layoffs purely as a mathematical remedy totally ignores the human reality of complex organizations. Executives face brutal trade-offs when making these calls. Now, sure, the short-term advantages are clear, right? You get immediate cost reduction, improved operating margins, and a sudden surge in investor confidence because, well, Wall Street absolutely loves a lean balance sheet.
But the hidden long-term costs, they are profound. You suffer a massive loss of top-tier talent and irreplaceable institutional knowledge. The employees left behind usually face a severe decline in morale and productivity, and your long-term reputational brand as a top-tier employer takes a huge hit. It begs a really crucial strategic question. Can a company truly cut its way to lasting success? Or does this kind of drastic action fundamentally weaken its DNA?
Which naturally leads us to ask, could Meta have done things differently? Were there alternative strategies that could have prevented this massive shock to the system? It's definitely worth asking if leadership could have read the macroeconomic tea leaves and slowed their hiring pace a whole lot earlier. Could they have aggressively reallocated talent from those long-term metaverse projects back to the core products rather than resorting to a hammer drop of mass layoffs? Or maybe, could they have phased these cost reductions gradually over time? This whole saga leaves us with one critical takeaway. Part 5, the ultimate leadership lesson, navigating growth and painful decisions. While we can sit back all day and debate the alternatives, the reality of the hyper-fast tech industry is that delayed decisions are often far more devastating than bold ones. Scaling quickly requires equally disciplined correction when conditions change. It's that simple. If you are going to accelerate at breakneck speed to capture a market, you absolutely must have the brakes to match. Growth without strict operational control inevitably leads to overexpansion, and overexpansion inevitably demands a painful surgical remedy to fix. So the next time you see dramatic tech layoff headlines scrolling across your feed, don't just reflexively ask yourself, well, what went wrong? Instead, use the framework we've built today to look a little deeper. Ask yourself, was this a fundamental failure of executive foresight, or was it a brutal, necessary act of strategic survival in an unforgiving market? Thanks for joining me for today's explainer. Keep questioning those headlines.